Okay, so we're back. It's 7 p.m. Mark and Danny are on the line. T. Cooper and Brent Glenn are here as co-hosts. And wanted to first, I had such a good time watching the pilot, and I wanted to thank you for it. And I want to find out what happens next. It feels
what
like
happens next?
It feels like the girl version of American Psycho.
Yeah, we tried. This is what happened next. This is the climax of the whole show, unfortunately, talking to Rob Schmidt about it, because I don't think anything's going to happen with it.
Oh.
Yeah. No, the story behind that I think was interesting in that we sold it to this company called UCP, which has, you know, USA and Sci-Fi Network and Bravo and E and a few other networks under umbrella. And we were like, oh, this is cool. We're working with the same people who made Mr. Robot, and they're very smart, you know, people, executives and everything. But unfortunately, the channel at, you know, at the company that raised their hand and said they really want it was E. And then so then when we finished the pilot and you know, it tested well, people seemed to like it. E basically was like, yeah, we don't know what to do with this. Like this is a, you know, we just want to do all reality shows. We have Botched by Nature and Botched and, you know, and the Kardashians, and we can't be dealing with this scripted television shit. So we kind of got left at the curb. Unfortunately, we chose the wrong pony.
Yeah, in retrospect, it might have been because I had the rest of the episodes mapped out, and it got a little crazy. I probably don't belong in TV. It was killing new people every week, and it just got nuts.
That was great.
I was on the murdering Harvey Weinstein tip before anybody, though.
That's true. She had a whole subplot about killing Harvey Weinstein. It was great.
And you, Mark, you've had business with Harvey Weinstein. I can't remember if Danny.
Yeah. Jesus.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The Harvey Weinstein short form story. We might as well tell all kinds of stupid industry stories while we're on with people. But basically, like my movie at Sundance, The House of Yes, which I made with your help because we were roommates at the time. And I remember Pan Martin used to come over and like do you know, like we would do editing sessions in our living room, which you gave us privacy for. But I remember Harvey bought that movie at Sundance. It was a big deal because back then Miramax was the biggest thing in the business, and so that was kind of great. And he was actually really kind of cool, like, you know, let me redo the score, you know, and everything. They botched the release of it, and then he also completely screwed me over by stealing the title of one of my movies because I submitted a script to him. He said no to the script, but then he like stole the title and put it on another movie and registered with the MPA. And we should have been forewarned, but then years later we made another movie, and unfortunately our producers decided to sell it to the Weinstein Company as distributors, and then like Harvey completely fucked that movie over, and we had like a good version of the movie that was testing really well. He said he's not going to release it unless he could do all the changes he wanted, and he completely messed up the movie. And the movie that
he was very nice and smart and knows his movies in pre-production.
Yes.
He was great. He sent us a delicious basket of food. It was all great until we like wrapped, and then he became, oh yeah, this Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, I mean, the Mephistopheles is charming, and he's a charming guy when he wants to be, and then he's just an absolute monster most of the time. But you know, we can't complain because he's done much worse than just fucking over a movie of ours. So, but at the same time, it's a good thing to have him tucked away.
I'm trying to think of where to start. And so we're going to, by the way, folks, you can write in the text section a question you have, and then Cooper or Brent or myself will read it out. And I'm trying to figure out how to identify you so that we can unmute you in case you have a follow-up to it. Does
people can raise their hands, right?
Yes, although I can't see everyone on the screen at once. I can only see half the folks
you can click on the upper right corner and click gallery view, which is the 9 little boxes together, and you'll see every person.
Oh Jesus, why'd you make me do that? Oh no, now I'm everywhere.
Yeah, but once you do that, then you see that like, yeah, half the people are kind of not showing themselves. So,
Yeah.
hello everybody.
Oh,
Everybody
hi, Andy.
who's connected. Howdy. Good to see you guys. I was just showing off my my Jake Gyllenhaal Prince of Persia mug. Just want to, just to advertise that movie if you need something to watch.
I have a question to start. Is a lot of the folks on this, obviously they're students, and they're concerned about their future. And Danny, what's a video store?
It used to be where we got our training, where we would rent these things before DVDs. What are DVDs? Rent these videos, and you get to watch movies all day. And actually it's great because I wrote my first script, Heather's, working in a video store, and it's almost like not having to go to a desk and write is better, because when you sit down at a desk and have to write, you got to start writing. But when you work at a video store, you can let the thoughts float in your head a little bit. So I always like, I like to say I like to do everything. I like to do everything right, everything but the writing when I start writing, because I like to just come up with good stuff. And then when you finally sit down and have to write, you got all this scraps of paper and things that you wrote while you were working that then you can actually put into a script. So I actually both, and I was working in a video store before Tarantino. I want that on the record too.
One of the great things about that Danny does still is that he still writes longhand. So he kind of like writes on paper, and his reasoning for it, I think is smart, which is that he basically doesn't want it to look good yet. Like if you start writing a script in final draft, it kind of looks like it's a script. It feels like it's a screenplay. But if you have to work it all out on paper first and write your dialogue down and everything, then when you actually have to type it in, you've already kind of like put it through one level of pain, and I do the same thing with editorial, where I refuse to put music on any rough cut, and editors hate it. They're like, they want to show you their rough cut with music. I'm like, no music. And so I like watch everything raw, and then you kind of go, okay, and then only after you've cut it a couple times, then you're allowed to add some music and make it kind of like look nice. But it's best for it to look ugly first.
Exactly.
I have a question. Hey guys, thank you so much for letting us see your pilot. It's so rare that we get to see stuff, behind the scenes. I just taught a TV class. It was last semester. It was the first time that I was able to do that. So a lot of my students are here, and it was really just a spec writing course. But they also got to, work on their own treatment, and we talked a little bit about pitching. So I was just wondering, I know that this died a sad grave, as you just explained, but I was wondering if you guys could take us through the process of Genesis, but also what was your pitch for this, and what kind of budget they gave you to shoot it, just, I don't know, some of those details I think would be really cool to hear.
Well, Mark, you got involved first with a book. There was a book, actually an unpublished book that hadn't come out yet. It's now out. But
it got published because of the pilot. It weirdly got a publishing deal because they thought it was going to be a TV show, and it wasn't. But they still got the book published. So good for them. I got sent this as this unpublished manuscript, which was kind of like interesting and really creepy. Frankly, the book itself did lack let's put it this way: the heroine of the book wasn't as charming as Anya Sinclair is in the pilot. But it was still really interesting, and it was one of these weird things where I knew right off the bat that it was something that was more my brother's cup of tea than mine. But I thought, okay, I like it, but if I could do it with Danny, then I knew it'd be something that could be interesting. And then we, when I kind of and they were very happy to loop Danny in, and excited that it became like a thing for the two of us. And then we, Danny basically, we kind of mapped out, okay, this is the stuff that's great from the book that you have to keep, and here's the stuff that you have to change, so you make it a character you actually want to watch, and on a recurring basis. And then we, just basically, went out. It was something where we didn't even do a lot of pitching around town. We basically had this interest even before we pitched from this umbrella company, and when we went in, they kind of bought it in the room, and they wanted it. And so we didn't do that thing of like, oh, let's go take it to HBO Max this week and take it to Legendary the next week. So yeah, so then it was actually a pretty easy pitching process to get it going, and then Danny kind of like went off and created a first draft, and it was all really a fast process, and there wasn't a lot of there was one other kind of big production entity involved, but they didn't really have much power in the process. We were able just kind of to do it how we wanted to do it. But Danny could talk about the process of actually like making the pilot script and stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's strangely helpful that when there's an existing property, even if
Mhm.
the existing property is not a bestseller, but because they spend money on this existing property, so they got some skin in the game, and I came in with some pretty drastic changes to like Mark said, to the lead character is almost like Travis Bickle in the book, and the humor's very almost too dark for me, and I tried to make her somebody you could cuddle with, and brought in Audrey Hepburn. Like in the book, there's a scene where she poisons the tampons at her workplace and gives everybody this disease. It's
It's terrible.
trust me, trust me,
Yeah.
you're not gonna miss anything. And then the author of the book ended up being a big fan. But it's funny, like now my brother and I, we've been pitching to various producers a different show that's just basically my idea, that's not based on an existing property, and I think it's wonderful, but people find a way to they don't find a way like, geez, I don't know, that's too weird, that's too strange. It's like, it's almost like if there's a book, it can't be too weird and strange because it's a book. So
Yeah.
it's always
Frank,
helpful to have
Frank,
an existing property.
I actually recommend people who are writers to sometimes is like, if you have a great idea that you're not selling as a screenplay, sit down and write a novel about it, get publish the novel, and then people will be clamoring to do the screenplay adaptation of it. But
Yeah, I'm
another
actually writing a novel right now that I'm hoping I get a chance to adapt before I give it to somebody else to adapt. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Great
I'll
book.
tell you another story in that regard was that there's this property that my production company had for years. We got it once again as an unpublished manuscript. Only the difference was that this writer became a huge writer. It was Looking for Alaska by John Green. And the guy who wrote Fault in Our Stars. There's some people nodding. I like that. And and it was something we tried to make as a movie for years. And it was something I always knew I wasn't going to direct myself. We just produced it, but it nonetheless, and we finally got it set up as a TV show this year, and it was something that was very interesting because we had this book that went from being a completely unknown book to being a book that was a beloved book, the first novel of a very successful novelist. So we went out with it as a TV pitch, and I had a great showrunner. I had Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage, who do like, Gossip Girl, Marvel's Runaways, and things like that. So people were just like falling over themselves in the room to buy it. We literally had nothing but positive offers every place we went to. And then we, and that one, it was actually on Hulu this fall. It came out in October. I recommend it if you have Hulu. You should check it out. Looking for Alaska. But that was also made extremely easy by the existence of the IP that was already a popular IP. But even an unpopular IP like this one still means something.
Can you guys talk a little bit about production and the development process at this point?
I mean, development's interesting in the sense that, like, one of the things about television is you have lots of people who want to weigh in on stuff, as opposed to, I always find if I'm making a movie, there's generally like, there's people at the studio level, the vice presidential level, who are the people you deal with every day, who usually have a lot of notes, but you don't have to do most of them. It's really the people, there's like one prime decision maker in every studio. And if you and them agree on something, like a bit of casting or key things in the script, it's kind of done. It's like, okay, great. We like you only have to really convince one person, sells one person on your idea. But in TV, you have to sell tons of people your idea. And you get notes from lots and lots of different people at the network level, at the studio level, your producing partners. Everybody wants to kind of like pitch in, and they're all creative people. And, but it is a lot of work getting something from like a first draft to like, okay, we all can high five over this and say we're going to produce it.
Well, there's a disease of note that I can't stand that's really gone around now, where like when you have a complex lead character,
Yeah.
they almost want her to be cured on page one. Like you have to fight for like making her fucked up at least for half the script. Like you're never making them they're like, well, wait a second, there's going to be a moment where people don't understand what she's doing, people who don't understand her motivations, we don't know why we're rooting for her, why should we like her. I'm like, if they turn the channel and after 10 minutes, fuck them. Like, they have, we have to like, just give me something. Let her fight her way out of a paper bag at least, please.
Now we had to do the kind of like, she's a millennial female Walter White, or Tony Soprano. We made that pitch of like, look, you're not going to comment on Breaking Bad and say, oh, he's doing nasty things. Like, she's a complex, interesting person who's got some weird, dark shit going on.
I had that moment with the pilot. I think maybe after the killing, obviously, when I wondered why I should like her, and then she's so charming that I began to love her, and by the end I was excited to see who else she would kill. So it did what it was supposed to. Congratulations. I think actually it did better than American Psycho, because I didn't really like him at the end, but I like her.
Yeah. One thing about the note process, and Danny's as guilty of this as any of us. Like I'm the same way usually when I'm getting editing notes, that the when you first see any notes, you go like, this is terrible. Like, I won't do any of this, and then you kind of like calm down, read them again, and say, okay, they have a problem with something. I disagree with their solutions for solving it, but let's get roll up our sleeves and figure it out. And I'm going to quote one of my favorite lines of my brother's is,
Oh, no.
I disagree with your note, but you're not wrong for having it. And that's a kind of a good like thing to live by, that like, even though you may hate what they're saying, there's some reason behind what they're saying, and you're dealing with lots of smart people. So, you just got to try to read between the lines sometimes.
Yeah, even a terrible note, when they give it, they're not lying when they say they don't like it. When
Yeah.
something, they're not like, oh God, this is so great, this is so amazing. We got to say something though. So you think, like, I always call it the note behind the note. Like, why would they give such a shitty note? They're having some sort of problem. That's honest, but let's figure out. Sometimes it's the scene before, sometimes it's the scene after, and they're complaining about the wrong scene. And if you could just massage this one part, by the time they get to the part they claim to have a problem with, they're not going to have a problem.
Mm. Yeah, and that's the big difference between TV and film, is that in film, I tend to be much more dug in about things that I feel passionate about, and I will kind of like go to the mat about things that I disagree with. Well, on TV, I'm much more of the mindset, and oftentimes, working with my brother, she and I are going to argue, we're going to squabble like we have our entire lives in the editing room. But if I'm working with like a showrunner creator who's hired me to do a pilot for them, I'm going to be much more beholden to them than I would like if in a situation where I was the kind of like this kind of the ultimate person who had to kind of like make the editing decision. So, I generally just take the attitude of like, okay, you know what, let's do the notes, and let's figure out the best way to achieve them without kind of compromising it. And that's something that in general for television, I'm always going to adopt the mindset of being I'm a little bit more of a team player in television naturally than I am in film.
Yeah, I find in film they want you to be a passionate asshole. Like he's saying yes to everything. What is this guy? What's this guy's problem? But like, if you're a passionate asshole in film, they like it. And directors and producers tell me that. In TV, the difference is you got to do the notes. You got to actually listen to them.
Yeah. And so production wise, like we didn't have a huge budget, but we also didn't have like a tiny budget. I mean, we shot in New York City, and we got to like shoot in Manhattan and got to kind of do pretty much everything we wanted. I mean, we spent I think we spent most of our budget on costumes, and also on locations. We got some great locations like the Brooklyn Museum, for the big finale, and the Times Square location was like a big hassle. Just a quick sidebar production story, which Rob, you'll appreciate because you've been through this kind of crap, where we basically had this entire thing mapped out at a completely different area of Times Square. And then literally the night before we were gonna go load in, they moved all of the trucks that for New Year's Eve load in our spot and parked them there. And the city just called us and said, "Oh yeah, so yeah, you're not going to shoot where we gave you a permit. But the good news is we're going to give you this other place, but you have to stay on a triangle of like this small little thing that was about 50 by 30 by 20, and you have to have your entire crew and everything inside that. You can't be anywhere outside it." And so I got there early in the morning and just started walked around with my DP, and we kind of figured out a completely new plan for how to shoot it, where we were going to basically kind of move the crew around in circles while we moved the camera, and kind of and plus I ordered up an extra 2 steady cams for the day. So I had 3 steady cams that could just move without having any dollies or anything. It was a big hassle, but it's New York City. That's what you get for being able to shoot in Times Square. You get that benefit, but you also have to deal with the hassle.
And if you're, that's amazing, by the way. Yeah, I think I've been on that triangle in Times Square with a low budget production before in hell. Is it? Are you guys comfortable? If you're not, that's okay. Telling so they get an idea of it. What a medium-ish budget is for a pilot.
I mean, this budget I think was about. I think it was 5. Am I right in saying that, Danny?
I don't remember.
I think it was. I think it actually was. It was 5 creeping up to 6. For basic cable, that's a lot.
It's funny that the E network, they had a huge allocation for making pilots. They're just not great at making TV series, but making pilots, they were great. And this ended up being the only pilot they made. They turned down everything else. And then, so, I mean, I know I'm just the writer in the hotel room, but it felt pretty nice to me. I mean, just going by my hotel rooms. I've directed a couple movies myself. You'll have to stare at IMDb and order them for $4.99 on Amazon. But Mark likes directing. I love writing in my underwear at all hours of the day. And so I would have to I'd have to leave the set at 4:00 when it seemed impossible to get all the shots, and then sneak back at the end and oh, they did it. They made their day. I hate the words "made your day." That is not a writer's term. A writer never makes his day. Anyway, that was my venting about go directing.
I just riff on that for a second. That Danny used to always say you spend all your time dreaming of the most beautiful version of the movie with these amazing tracking shots and then incredibly cinematic images, and then you end up basically at 4:00 just scrambling for coverage. And as Danny's very astutely put it, he said that he loves everything about directing except time pressure and making decisions. So it's one of the reasons he's kind of steered clear of it recently.
I never met a lunch penalty I didn't like.
Yeah. Anyway.
Danny, I had a quick question just for the the more creative side of it. Not that directing's not creative and production is not creative, no shade. I'm wondering how many episodes you kind of beat out, and I'm assuming it was 10 eps or so. And I'm also wondering when you were when the network wanted you, and then when you wanted to have the big kind of reveal from her past as far as what was driving her to this kind of violence.
Yeah, I mean, so I had the book, obviously the pilot is only the first part of the book, and the book's got a lot more. But I mean, I went off in a lot of tangents of different victims and different people she would come across. and different statements I wanted to make about fashion and pop culture. But it ended up in the same place with this competition. And yeah, definitely the flashbacks are weeded in, and there's probably a reveal halfway through the season that she killed her sister. And there's a psychiatrist character, but it ends up being, and she ends up framing one of the other characters to be the killer. And it's, I'm trying to remember,
Sarah.
It's another terrifying thing about writing a TV series where you set up a brilliant detective character, and he's like okay, he's a brilliant detective character, really hasn't figured it out in 10 episodes, and we want to get renewed for next season. Like, this is, so I had a lot of side cases where he's solving other crimes. And in fact, I have she ends up now she ends up taking the MO of a serial killer, like the Zodiac killer, who was never caught. And then the actual Zodiac killer, who's now happily married and retired, is like, what the fuck is this girl doing? And so he ends up coming back, and he ends up like, oh, I forgot I love killing. So there's a little, so the detective ends up catching him, and that's a distraction that lets her go a couple more episodes. But
But she makes fun of him too. She, in her voiceover, she was just going like, "What's with this guy? I'm giving it to him on a platter. You can't figure this thing out."
Breaking up with him because she still hasn't discovered she's the killer.
Yeah. But then he does figure it out. But then he still can't prove it, and he's like, so it becomes a bit more of a cat and mouse game over the back half of it was a 10 episode beat sheet. Which I'll share with you later if you. But
it is to me. It's my problem with TV that 10 episodes, 22 episodes, they end up being, especially detective shows. Like, wait a second, you have solved 75 of the most lurid, crazy crimes of all time. Shouldn't you retire and write a book? I mean, come on. And it only took you an hour every time.
Does anyone have any questions? You can also, you guys are okay with us asking you about your big fancy movies, that Heathers, Mean Girls,
I did a Batman movie.
Yeah, we have them talk about Batman before superheroes.
No Hudson Hawk questions.
Masterpiece. But yeah, I say you could talk about the pilot if you want to, or ask about anything about filmmaking, anything about anything we've done, or just didn't, or about how to break into the business, or whatever. Anything that's of interest.
Now, I think we need you to
raise your hand.
Yeah.
Or turn on your video and raise your hand.
Jen, is it Gina Lee? Looks like your hand's raised.
Oh.
Hi. Yeah. Hey, thank you for doing this. It was really good. I had a question about breaking into the industry. If for someone who's interested in doing something like going into screenwriting or producing, what do you think of things like the NBC Page program, or working in an agency from the mailroom and just trying to expand our network? And actually, sorry, it's a twofold question. I know you mentioned that it got dropped by E and UCP, but are you allowed to continue to shop it around and continue to do anything with it next? So thank you.
Let's start with the second question because it's more interesting. It is in the sense that one of the good things about television is that there's something about letting things go that's really healthy for your mental state. And in film, you spend so much of your time pushing boulders up the hill of certain projects that really aren't meant to happen, or maybe they will. And we always say the worst project a filmmaker makes is their baby project that they've wanted to make for years. It usually ends up being a really disappointing project, but at the same time, you never let anything go in film. If it doesn't get made in this incarnation, you'll try to get it made again, and you'll keep reworking it. You never ever give up on a film project, really. Well, with TV, there's a thing about you know what, you put a lot of creative energy into something, you make it, it either takes or it doesn't take. In this situation, by the time we'd we found out from E that they weren't going to like ask for more episodes. Every other kind of corporate entity in town had already made their own pilots and made their own pilot decisions. So there was really no openings anywhere else to take it. And once you kind of like that's happened, you're not going to kind of take it back for a year and try to remake it again. You actually have to like release the actors contractually and everything. And that's actually a good thing, because you can take Fashion Victim and say, you know what, putting that in the rearview mirror, and we're not going to work on that anymore. We're going to devote our creative energies into creating something new and pitching that next year. And so that's a healthy thing.
Also, the company UCP had some weird.
Yeah.
Like they couldn't just bring it to Netflix. They had like all different contracts, which kind of prevented it from going to streaming, which was a problem.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I can't. Going back to the first question, the more difficult, thorny one. I'm going to talk about networking and joining a page program, and to me, that's stuff you do to get out of writing. Like look at the example of me that I'm charming and I'm charming now, but back then when I was writing my script, I was still kind of a creepy, weird kid. And if I had to get a job through networking, I'd still be in a basement somewhere. Like to me, it's all about writing that first script, not the first pitch, not the first elevator pitch, not the first like idea on a back of a piece of paper, like writing a script. And I can't emphasize enough, you're in a golden period where you can write something original, and there people will always be dying for an original script that's maybe a genre. Like the best is a genre that we're all beginning to be sick of, and you make a twist to it. People are dying to read that. And the irony is that once you write an original script, a script that's a little different, a script that, like I wrote Heathers because I wasn't seeing that movie. Like nobody was making a really dark Doctor Strangelove teen film. So I go, fuck, I guess I got to write it. And if you write that movie, the original twist on a genre, then they'll say, come to Hollywood and let us exploit you and give you a Batman movie. But if you go to Hollywood and say, I want to write a superhero movie. Where's my superhero movie? They'll go, get away from me, kid. But if you write something original and a little strange, a little off, like, you know, these poor people, they get 50 scripts a weekend. The one that sticks out they're gonna fall in love with it. Anyway, that was.
Yeah, Jeannie, could you unmute yourself again?
Yeah.
Because I would like to hear from you, because Danny kind of speaking that as a kind of a purely creative person, and the thing is, like, not everybody can write, you know, and I certainly, you know, I came up as an actor, and then you know, kind of only and it was a theater actor, and then kind of like theater director, and then made movies, you know, little short films. But at the same time, like, I've always known about myself that I was a very mediocre actor. That's why I kind of moved to directing, and I also knew that I was a very mediocre writer. And it was actually that awareness is one of the reasons why I think I've been able to have a career, because a lot of people, and Rob can speak to this, that there's a lot of people who we went to film school with who are terrific filmmakers, but they believe that they're really good writers too, and they weren't, you know, and they never really have gotten any kind of career on track, because they keep on trying to write original screenplays that are not good, and they're kind of like stuck in first gear, you know. And it's actually like the people be able to have that awareness of like, oh, you know what, I need to adapt something that's already been written by somebody who's smart, or work with a writing partner, or get a hold of a property and hire somebody, or have a friend who's a screenwriter and develop it with them. That kind of self-awareness is really important if you want to kind of create your own work. Because one thing that we can all attest to is that the best thing you can have right now is control of your own property, and the best way to control it is to write it yourself, you know. And if you're not a good writer, then there's other ways around that. Like in my first movie, I got the rights to a play that was, you know, that was kind of a play that nobody liked, that kind of bombed everywhere except for one city, San Francisco, where I lived. And then I adapted it and got it made into a movie. But I essentially controlled the rights to that play for a year, and was able to get a movie made in that time. but that's kind of like, that's something, so something to think about is like, what's your ultimate goal? This is what I want to do you on the mute is that, like, do you see yourself in your ultimate version of a career being a writer director? Like, do you fancy yourself being Paul Thomas Anderson or Quentin Tarantino? Do you fancy yourself being more of a director or more of a producer? Like, because that would actually affect how I would answer the question for you.
Yeah. I feel a lot of pressure to answer that in front of 50 strangers. But, no, yeah. I mean, I'm still like trying to figure out what I want to do, but that's, yeah, like that's something I'm very interested in. And the reason why I specifically asked the question of working up your way through a mailroom, like at WME or CA or whatever, is because like I'm someone who I don't have many connections within the industry. And I hear that's just a really good way to like break yourself in and then just meet the right people. But yeah, I mean, I'm still obviously figuring it out. I don't,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, because
I definitely recommend anytime one of your friends or friends of a friend asks you to read a script, read their script, put some effort into giving them notes, because that kind of love gets passed around. And it's what I did when I first moved out here. And I like, sometimes reading a bad script makes you feel good about yourself. Like, hey, if they're calling this a script, maybe I can write a script, or maybe I can attach or if you read a great script and like, maybe like I can help this script. Like, you know, like I mean, New York's got its own thing, but I always recommend the beauty of Los Angeles, which is a problematic city, but crazy accidents happen where like you do run into people that have material, and like they ask you to do something, then you do something for them, and all of a sudden you're on the set of a movie. It's crazy.
Yeah, and you know, you like the fact is you're at an age right now too where you know you can travel and move places without bringing a whole lot of baggage with you. And the fact is, like, the film business is in Los Angeles, and so yeah, you can get a film degree at Emory, and that's amazing, and hopefully an overall great education. But at the same time, like, you got to find your way to Los Angeles,
Yeah.
and because you're and if it's, you know, sure, maybe it's working in a mailroom, maybe it's working as a PA on productions first, maybe it's just like, you know, doing something completely different just to make money, and then kind of like, and then having, you know, getting your you end up like rubbing elbows with people, as Danny says, that can do things for you. You're going to run up elbows with people who are like, oh, I'm a screenwriter, and like, you know, and oh good, let me read your script, or I'm an actor, you know, and we're doing a stage reading, can you direct it? And it's like, you know, we don't have a director, you know, sure, I'll do that, you know. Like, when my first directing gigs were me just lying and say I could direct. You know, I had a bunch of friends who were actors, and they were like, we need somebody to direct this thing, like, have you ever directed before? And I go, oh yes I have, you know. And then I was directing something in a garage, you know, and then I started directing bigger and bigger things, and eventually I got paid to direct theater, you know. But it was all through starting by lying, you know. So, but the thing is, like, the people who are in your classes with you right now, like, they could be some of your great collaborators in the future, and if not them, people that you might meet if you come out to Los Angeles and start meeting other people your age who also are excited to be in the business.
Yeah. Thank you. That was very helpful.
Yeah, the agency thing's interesting. I would say the people who I know who work in agencies are people who want to be either work as an executive or as a producer. You know, like, and the fact is, if that's your interest, it is a great place to start off, you know, and you just to kind of get to know people, get to know agents. You know, the fact is, like, I know people who started off as, you know, agents assistants, and then became agents, and then left and became very successful producers. Like my agent right now, interestingly enough, used to be Rob and I's lawyer, and then he kind of like, and then he ended up like moving from being a lawyer to actually running a studio, and then he went back to being and actually becoming an agent, you know. And so so the thing is, certainly being more from that end of things, as opposed to, like, you know, being the end of, like, I am a gritty creator, writer, director type, you know, who's gonna, I don't care if I'm, you know, stay poor the rest of my life, but I'm gonna make some interesting new cinema. that's a different kind of like mindset than one that's like, yeah. So
I mean, that was probably mine. I tried to get a job with an agency. I tried to get a reader job with studios, and like I got laughed out of the room, and like it was almost like I sometimes wonder like what would happen if I had gotten one of those jobs. Would I have written Heathers? Would I have written anything? Like sometimes sometimes eating microwave popcorn for dinner is the best thing to get you to write.
Do you think it's just because of how time consuming it is to be in that world? And
yes.
Yes, absolutely. Because I know just from a run I had as a reader, like I was sweating and like, geez, I gotta read them scripts. And then I was so bad at it. Like my coverage was longer than the scripts.
Yes. Yeah. That's the thing about that's one of the things about people who want to be PAs. I say being a PA is interesting if you want to just be on a movie set, but just do it once. Like, don't get sucked into becoming like a PA, because it's incredibly time consuming. I mean, you're working like 70 hours a week. Same thing with working in an agency. It's like 50 to 60 hours a week, and you aren't going to have time to go off and like go home and write your script. You know, like I eventually, when I ended up making The House of Yes, I was working like 25 hours a week as a temp, you know, and basically like saying, okay, I'm going to do a job where like I have zero skin in the game where I'm working, but I'll make enough money to buy like microwave burritos and eat half for lunch and half for dinner, and just embrace that poverty, because then I would have all this other time to actually get my writing done, you know, and that's another approach as well, you know.
And no dating either, which worked out well for me. It became really easy. I don't know why. I blame the scripts.
Yeah.
We have two,
Anyway,
we have two questions in the queue. First, Hayden, and then next, Catherine. Hayden, unmuted.
Unmuted. Hello.
Hayden. Hey.
Hi, thank you for sharing your pilot with us.
Wait, speak up. We can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for sharing your pilot with us. I just wanted to ask about when you're meeting young directors or screenwriters or photographers, what are some of the qualities that really, I don't know, you might not have any, but that really strike you as, okay, this person's going to be successful in this? And I assume it'll be different for directors versus screenwriters versus, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mark's answer probably is more important, but I'll say I like right away when I'm meeting somebody, a young writer, young prospective writer, a young prospective director, that they've seen a movie before 1980. They can mention a movie from before 1980 that they really love. I'm like, done, deal. You can vomit on my floor and I'll still love you.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's something when people say like, you know, like what's your idea of classic cinema? And they're like, Inception. You know, that's a classic. I mean, I love the movie too, but it's kind of like, no, that's not classic cinema. Like, you know, classic cinema is Chinatown. You know, and so that. But I would say that I do meet a lot of directors when I'm producing, and you know, and have, you know, do the kind of go through the hiring process. I would say that like you want to have as a director, and the great thing that for somebody in the current world is you don't have to like, you know, get 16 millimeter film you know, scraps and kind of cobble together a movie and get an editing room somewhere where you cut it together. You can shoot with your oh, the sun's going bad on me. My DP would actually make us put a flag up. But yeah, essentially you can shoot with your iPhone. You know, the iPhone 11's got a better camera than most of the video, like the Alexa I use on like Mr. Popper's Penguins is not as good a camera as the iPhone 11. So it's like you can do that, and you can edit on your computer. So you want to make an interesting short film if you're a director, like having some piece of thing you can show people. And I would say one of the keys about short films is don't make them 25 minutes long. You know, they should be under 10 minutes, and it should be like you telling a great dinner party joke. Like, oh, let me tell you something that happened to me, and it has like a beginning, middle, end, and a quick punchline, and people go, oh wow, that was a crazy story of what happened to you. Like every great short film that's ever like won the Oscar is usually something that has that kind of like neat, like compartmentalized quality to it. It is not like a a feature that you only had enough money to shoot 20 minutes of. Yeah, and but the other thing I just want for directors, you just want them to be prepared, and if they're talking about a certain project, you want them to be like have done so much work that they don't have to like read notes. Like I always find when somebody breaks out a computer, breaks out paper to read, I'm turned off by it. I want somebody who's thought about what they want to say and then memorized it, or like memorized it to the point where they can sit and have a conversation with you and they have all their talking points in mind, but they're not necessarily like referring to them. And it's funny because meeting directors has made me better at taking meetings as director, because I know that when I end up getting jobs, sometimes people are always saying, wow, we really like the fact that you're able to talk for like an hour about this project without any notes with such detail. It's because I spend the time, like I prepare for a meeting like over the course of like 3 days. I'll put that much work into getting ready for an hour and a half meeting. And then as far as writers, I would say that the key thing I'm looking for is a voice. And I know it's a kind of a cliche. My brother, had it in spades from the very beginning, where people read the script and they were kind of jarred, like, wow, who's this person? Like, this person has a point of view that I haven't read before. And it's interesting because when you go through a pile of scripts, you kind of feel like you're reading people who are rewriting lines from 1 hour dramas they've watched for years. There's nothing kind of distinctive in the way people talk, or even in the narrative description. It just feels a little bit like, okay, these people are regurgitating things they've seen other people write. And then when you read something that's really original and has like a sharp, like point of view, it really, it makes you sit up and notice, and you really like, if I'm bored by a script, I will, like about 10 pages in, I'll say, okay, I'm going to keep reading it, but only read dialogue. And then if I doesn't hold my interest for like another 30 pages, I won't finish it. But with great scripts, or just even scripts that are like flawed, where the storytelling is flawed and it doesn't quite pay off in the third act, if it's got a great voice, if it's got that thing where it feels like this person's got like a really incredibly distinct point of view, I'll enjoy reading it to the end, and then I'll have notes. But having notes is a luxury. It means like this is good enough to have notes on.
Yeah, I mean, some people when they're writing, they get nervous. Well, wait a second, I haven't seen this in another movie before. I must be doing something wrong. When they should be thinking they must be doing something right. Because a lot of people have the attitude, it can't be a cliche. Everybody else does it. And that's the bad attitude.
Thank you.
We have Catherine up, and then Rhett after Catherine, and Melissa after Rhett.
Hey, Catherine.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for being here. Bad Santa 2 and Batman Returns changed my life.
Oh.
And
Batman Returns changed your life, but Bad Santa too?
Come on, guys. Kathy Bates and Billy Bob Thornton, get out of here.
Wait, take a quick sidebar is that Andre Leontali, who's not the greatest thespian ever from our pilot, a very interesting dude. As he was kind of like, all kinds of diva problems to deal with, and he, during the show. But then as he was leaving on his portable go-kart, he stopped. He goes like, "Before I leave, Mark, one thing for you: Bad Santa 2, masterpiece." It's like, and he says in my first AD, have you seen it? He's like, "I haven't." "You're missing out." And I was like,
incredible.
So Bad Santa 2, you're all right by me.
All right, man. So that's kind of interesting that you bring up his big personality. This question is kind of inspired by, like the legends of Keaton, kind of like trying to cut out dialogue. And this question is for both of you, actually. What do you wish more actors understood about your respective jobs, and how often or how do you feel like you're able to communicate that, either like on set or in pre-production or along those lines?
Well, I'm actually always impressed that the actors bring something to me that I'm not aware of. Like going back to Batman Returns, I wrote all these great cynical arias, these speeches for Batman. And when I started working with Michael Keaton, says, "Well, listen, these are great lines, but once I put on that suit, Batman can't say all this. Like, and he said, this is great, but it's too much. You got to get it down to one line. And he went through the whole script like that. And then it was great. You know, at the time I was like, how dare he take my great
Right,
lines?
that feels pretty bold.
But then when I saw like the Christopher Nolan Batmans, which I like, but you know, Christian Bale's in that suit and he's giving these long speeches and you just expect him to like pull out a water, like, oh, excuse me. For the death of Gotham, I am the darkness. Hold on. But so, and then another great lesson I learned from Batman Returns is that, like, Danny DeVito was going to play the villain, and so I wrote the first draft of the script, and Danny DeVito takes me aside and goes, "Yeah, this is good, but you know, you wrote a Danny DeVito role. Like I can, you know, like Danny DeVito, like every line seems like something Danny DeVito would say, and this is Danny DeVito talking to me, and it was a great lesson. Like, well, wait, no good actor wants to be in their comfort zone, stay in their comfort zone. So, like, I know when I'm doing the original draft, I don't even think about the actor anymore. Like I want to write something great, and the actors will crave something different and something unusual. I'm trying to think of times where I was not having a good time with the actor. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes it's with actors that you can't say anything to. Like Bruce Willis, there's a line in Hudson Hawk. It's not the greatest line in the world, but he's talking to the male and female villains of the movie who are married and says, I guess I know who wears the penis in this family, and to the woman. And not the greatest line, but then he kept changing to, who's got the dick? And I'm like, Bruce,
No.
Bruce, buddy, there's a little play on words going on here. But, you know, eventually, like I find with actors, especially when you write comedy, when they hear you laughing at something, they know they're doing it well. And when you're like nodding your head, like they go, something may be off here. Something may be wrong. But that's a very anecdotal answer. Mark Waters will have the more scientific answer.
Thank you.
I mean, the thing is, like, obviously, like I've done a lot more work with actors, you know, than it would be because I've directed a lot more. But at the same time, it's like, you're always figuring out how much you don't know about actors the more you work with different ones. And the thing is, I used to be an actor, but I feel like it doesn't require being an actor or having that experience to be able to direct actors really well. The thing, you know, and it's the thing I've learned over time is that the best way to direct actors is to be very, very open and clear about what you want, you know, and to relate to them. This is what the movie is, you know, and this is what the movie is we're making. This is what like, I don't try to say like this is what your character should do or what you should do. It's more like, this is what I need to see. This is what I'm hoping for. And then you're going to hopefully, I never try to like line read them, or if I do, I say, don't, yeah, you know, but I always preface it by saying, don't do it like I'm going to do it. Do it better. You know, like, you know, and I always want them to be.
They may not know what a line reading is.
Oh, no. A line reading is when you basically, somebody says, you know, like a line from the script that has a very obvious way it should be said, and so actors can come up with some way to say like, wow, how are you saying it that way? And so you kind of sometimes will say like, no, it's this is what the line is. You know, I always also use Shakespearean terms. In Shakespeare, there's a logic of speech, and the logic of speech behind the line is this musicality, and then I'll say it, and they'll be like, oh, okay. Say it like it's supposed to be like it was written, you know. But at the same time, you can never really like give an actor a line reading where you tell them how they should be saying the line without doing it really delicately or having a really good relationship. You know, there's certain actors I work with, like Jamie Lee Curtis, she would just be like, "Give it to me, go." And I'd be like this, be like, "Go, right, of course," you know. And then she'd go with like, "Yeah, I'll happily go and do it the way you just."
No, I talked to Jamie Lee Curtis, and I go, does Mark give line readings? Does Mark give line readings? He gives full body readings. He gives everything.
Anyway, but that said, like every actor wants something different from you and needs something different from you. And so like, and the thing is like, and when I did my first movie, I storyboarded every shot and like did 2 weeks of rehearsal for a 4-week shoot. And it was it was because I had this theater background. I needed that comfort zone of like, oh, this is what is going to make me feel like secure that I'm not going to fuck this up. But I look at that movie now and it feels kind of airless to me, and everything's a little bit too mapped out. And over time, I've gotten more and more to the point where I don't do any rehearsal. You know, I much prefer to have like I like to sit at a table for a week and just read the script together, talk about the scenes at length, you know, and any kind of philosophical ideas we have, any kind of problems. You always remember that scene in Hearts of Darkness, the documentary about making of Apocalypse Now, where you have an entire crew of hundreds of people and with extras waiting around while Brando and Coppola sit there for hours, just like with the script kind of noodling over it. And I thought, yeah, I don't want to do that on set, you know, like, but I want to have a chance for the actors to talk to me about any issues they have. So we completely understand what we're going for. And I do talk in actor terms. I know that, like, yeah, we want to talk about the actors, that character's super objective. What are their actions in the scenes? You know, what Mary Louise Parker always said a great thing is like, talk to me in verbs, not adjectives, or verbs, not adverbs. Because people who say, I want this to be angrier, don't do that. It's like, no, say, I need you to attack her more. You know, it's like, oh yeah, use a verb, and the actors respond to that. Oh, good, they're giving me an action here. And so go over that time, and then when you get on set, don't talk to them that much. Like, you literally, like, you want to have it all been talked about, so everybody knows what you want and what they want to try to do, and then you can just nudge them a little bit. It's kind of like, I prefer to be like, when I'm working with really good people, it's like a dolphin nudging a shark. You just kind of bump them a little bit and say like, hey, let's try that again. And only why don't you, pick it up faster. David Cronenberg had a great thing. He only gives 4 directions. He says a little faster, a little slower, angrier, and don't give so much away. And literally, that's the only things I'll ever say to an actor. And I'm not quite that bad, but at the same time, I do try to keep it very minimal. So you're just saying very, very small adjustments and not overload them a lot of things to think about. And so, and just riffing a little bit more on this, that like when I did this movie, Just Like Heaven, I worked with Mark Ruffalo, who's a phenomenal actor, Reese Witherspoon, phenomenal actor, completely different. Like Mark wanted to do tons of rehearsal, you know, and Reese wanted to just get in there and nail it right at the first take. And so I kind of mapped out my world, like, okay, I'm going to do the master shot first and do more master shots than I need, and even lie and say, oh, we had a problem with focus on that, or the Dollywood move wasn't good, and just do more masters than I normally would do. And then I'd shoot everybody else's coverage in the whole scene first, and shoot Reese first. She's like bang, 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 nailing it right after that. And then finally, when I get around to shooting Mark's like, oh, good, I've already done the scene 12 times. Now I can actually relax and do 2 cameras on me, and I feel like I've had enough time to rehearse it. And then he's able to play. And so getting a sense of those kind of things, and like, you know, the difference between like Kathy Bates and Billy Bob Thornton. Kathy Bates craved feedback. She would look to me between every take and be like, how was that? You know, like what was it? And I would give her like, yeah, this is working, this is not working so well. You know, why don't you let's just do the second half of the scene or whatever. With Billy, he just wanted the smallest little comments. I would just go up to him and like, I would sometimes go up to him and go like, shrug, and he'd be like, shrug, and I'd be like, should we do another one? Like, yeah, let's do another one. And like, or like, you know, you did something interesting on her side where you did this. You want to try that? Like, oh yeah, let me try that. But he didn't want to like hear from me that much, so I didn't talk to him. You know, and I'm not gonna like, he's bad Santa. I'm not gonna like say, hey, you have to define bad Santa by the way I'm telling you. So you know, it's always a movable feast. Yeah. Hey Rob, if you don't mind, I have to change locations because I was expecting there to be cloud cover, and I also have to go use the restroom. Can we take a quick 5-minute break and then restart in 5?
We can, yes, we can absolutely.
Or even better, Danny continues being the charming bon vivant that he is, and I'll just rejoin you in 5 from a different location.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll spit.
Thank you, guys.
Rhett, did you have a question? Was it for Danny, or I know you like directing?
It was for both, because it kind of is about kind of subjects that have weaved between both your work. I'm Rhett. I graduated from Emory recently. I'm at film school at SCAD right now.
I love the
and-
name. I always want to name my son Rhett, but no, I couldn't impregnate anybody. So
well, it's not all of your work is like this, but I think there are a lot of similarities between, kind of your and Mark's more famous work with Heathers and Mean Girls, and now the
Heathers
pilot.
and Mean Girls. You think they're alike? Really? You think my younger brother
Um,
off my movie and made millions more dollars than I did? I've never noticed that before, but thank you. For pointing it out.
but no, I mean, I rewatched both of them this week to just kind of like refamiliarize myself, and they were even more similar than I remember. Through
One's
the you
haute
have the-
couture and one's ready to wear, but keep going.
with the pilot and with those, you have this kind of young female character who's on the outside of the hierarchy, and obviously in some dark scenarios, the pilot and Heather's being a little darker than Mean Girls. I'm just curious about what attracts you guys to that kind of tone or that kind of subject matter.
I know for me that like, it's just that when you have, and it's not even me being a grand and noble feminist, but to me, when you have a female protagonist, it makes it off the bat, you're starting the game on second base, because it's already more original than most movies. I feel like between Shakespeare and David Mamet, men have been done to death.
Yeah.
So I think just having a female protagonist is much more interesting. And now there's a whole thing about like, dear God help us, Brie Larson's Captain Marvel, about strong female characters, and they found a way to make the strong female character boring. Like to me, like I want fucked up Jack Nicholson female characters. I wanted to get that. To me, that's truly original. Like when you take a woman and when you give a woman a sense of humor, it's more revolutionary than when they take out a team of hitmen on a staircase. Like to me, that's much more fascinating and much more of a degree of difficulty dive, which is challenging in the best way.
Cool. And then just kind of another follow-up with everything that's going on now. And we've been in this kind of a lot of things shifting toward TV rather than film. And also now in this whole kind of quarantine era we're in, how have you seen the way that your kind of day-to-day work is functioning differently? As a writer, I mean, you probably have certain things you're working on, but how is your kind of pitch process different, or deals that are getting made for things in the future?
Definitely not in a pitch process, and like not. I am totally dedicated. I've been tooling around, like I said before, I've been tooling around on a novel, and like I see every movie that comes out, unfortunately. Like, if you look at my year, I do a year-end list of the 330 plus movies I've seen in a theater, first run. Every movie that comes out, I feel the need to see. Now that the theaters are closed, it's been a godsend to me as far as like my writing. I'm keeping normal writing hours. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing what happens when you start writing at 8 a.m. and don't stop till 8 p.m. You actually get stuff done. Who knew?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I've been, I don't want to celebrate too much, but it's definitely been good for me. Although, like, I could come out of the cave and nobody wants to read what I've written, and that's always a problem. But yeah, it's funny. I've got a couple emails of producers that have sent me something to like write the pilot for or be a co-producer on, and I can't even open an email. I know what it's going to be about. It's like, it's hard for me to work right now. It's like, I'm, total left brain. Is there a right brain or left brain? Right braining it with my novel. So I don't want to I don't want to ruin it by starting to think about like actually making money or something like that. Something heathen like that,
Yeah.
But,
thank you.
yeah. So it's, I don't know what my brother's doing, because my brother was actually doing a project with Chinese that was going to partly be shot in China with Chinese production. So he knew about his life was ruined by his career was ruined by the coronavirus more before anybody's. So like, and he's relying on the input of other material. Like I can live in a dream world where I'm creating material and thinking something's going to happen with it. But Mark is, I think, a lot more stuck. Geez, I get. Well, we've established it wasn't number one that he's going. Okay.
No, Mark is back actually.
I am back.
In defense of number one. Melissa, I think you're up now.
Wait, he should answer that
Oh yeah,
question.
yeah. If Mark can answer that, I basically asked with everything that's going on with quarantines and shutting down productions, how has your kind of workflow and day-to-day changed in terms of pitching things, developing things? If you were in pre-production for something already, how has that landscape kind of turned now?
Yeah, I mean, my personal story is an unpleasant, sordid one in that the project that I was had really been developing for almost a year, and more than developing, I was doing previs and working with my visual effects team, and I actually had it mostly cast. It was set. We were shooting it in Guangzhou, China, Bangkok, Mumbai, and London, and it was kind of a big epic sci-fi movie. So we kind of got shut down before everybody. Like basically, like when it was just happening in China, my Chinese financing entity, Tencent, basically said, "Yeah, we've sent everybody home. Nobody's coming to the office." And we were going like, "What do you mean nobody's coming to the office?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, this thing is bad." And then the interesting thing is that now, like my actors were all kind of bummed out about it too, because I was basically about to go and travel to Bangkok to start prep, and the interesting thing is developed is that the financing entities now, China is kind of like craving for us to get back on board and start prepping the movie again, because they basically had to shut down everything.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Wow.
And the interesting thing is that they now have like changed their mind and said, okay, let's try to do the whole movie in Bangkok, so we don't have to travel the crew or anybody. Once people are in one place, and Bangkok happens to be a place where it's not really getting hard hit, and so suddenly they've been calling me saying, hey, if we got you on a plane to Bangkok, would you go? And I'm kind of I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready yet, but like my actors, are weirdly enough, like one of my lead actors is Australian, the other one's from Shanghai, and they were Beijing actually, and they're both like, yeah, fuck yeah, we'll get on a plane, we'll go to Bangkok. So weirdly enough, it might actually re-engage,
Wow.
But at the same time, when this thing went to hell in a handbasket, I took some meetings on another project, and it's funny for both of them. My first meeting was like going and hanging out with a producer and having a normal kind of meeting. The second meeting for both of them was a Zoom meeting, and now both projects are like, yeah, it was a good meeting, but we don't know if we're even going to go forward with the project. So they're both kind of, everything's very much on hold as far as like something being real. Weirdly, the one that felt like it was most in the crapper is the one that actually seems like to have the best chance of happening now. So.
Interesting. Thank you.
I didn't know you had good news. That's good.
Yeah, good-ish. Yeah.
Melissa?
Yeah. Hey guys. So my question kind of goes back to the pilot, and I was just curious on the timeline of the project. So from the time that you decided you want to start working on it up until the point where you decided not to pick it up, how long of a time span was that?
I mean, just my memory is that the actual decision making as far as whether it would get picked up happened in early March, or kind of let's say mid March of 2018, and so it's been about 2 years plus, and then we shot the pilot in December, right after New Year's in Manhattan, and then when in an editing room. No, it was after Thanksgiving, because I remember I caught that weird virus from my
You just
daughter.
said after New Year's, senile.
Oh,
Everybody heard you. 1,000 faces heard you.
I just saw the Visit by M. Night Shyamalan, so I'm just channeling the grandparents. But anyway, so it was then we edited, pretty much starting at the new year, and then backing up from that, we obviously, it was pre-production, went into like September, October. But as far as like going back to like the script development, it really started almost, I would say, not quite an entire year before, but basically like spring of 2017 was when we sold the pitch and Danny went off to write the first draft. So it took almost an entire year.
But it felt like there were no gaps. It felt like I
Yeah.
started adapting the book. I finished adapting the book. We were already talking about where we're going to shoot it, and it just it doesn't really happen that quickly. It was very fluid to me at least.
That's true. There was never any question whether it was going forward. It was always going forward. Like, even though when they said we have notes on your script, we have notes, but we're definitely making it, was always the mindset.
Right, cool. Thank you.
Okay, so
Excellent.
we have a few more questions. We have about 4, if that's okay, and then we'll.
We'll go all night. Not really.
Jesus
But
Christ, I gotta go to a bar soon.
exactly.
Murphy is
By,
up.
by the way, I
Oh
have to
wait,
tell a
it's
quick-
right here.
We had to tell a quick story. Danny basically was told that, like, my mother wanted him to send some DVDs to her, for like old Academy DVDs and things, so that they would have something to watch. And so he kind of planned it. He like got all geared up, got his gloves on, walked out his back door, and right at that moment, like, a homeless man with no pants on was running down the street, being trailed by a cop car and a fire engine. And he just like turned and went back inside, went back into quarantine.
No, but I live in downtown LA. It's great.
Murphy, are you there?
Next one.
Yeah, hi, I'm here. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yay.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so like you said, I'm Murphy, and my question is regarding Heather's Mean Girls and the pilot. And so how do you go about picking the music for the episode or for the movie? So like in Heather's, you have Que Sera, which opens it, like everything that will be, it kind of sets a tone. And like in Mean Girls, when Katie's trying to sabotage Regina, you use Blondie's one way or another. And then in the pilot, you have like Sophie Tucker's Best Friend and You and Me by Disclosure. I use a lot of Spotify, like all the time. So I was just wondering how.
Well, I just want to say right now, I was the music supervisor for Fashion Victim because
Yes.
that's
Good
all,
choices. I
that's
love all of
jet
them.
track, baby. I pick a lot of cues there.
Yeah,
my
and
members. I
in
still listen
addition to that, yeah, I mean, I've done pilots before where I've hired a composer. Like when I've done network pilots, like for CBS, you actually will hire a composer and have a composer score the pilot for you. One of the great things about Fashion Victim is that Danny and I helped a little bit on this, but you did most of it. Was like we just said, okay, we're gonna go poach our score cues as well as our
not
song
just
cues.
the songs, but the scores is what the score cues
Yeah.
as well.
I love that cue from Thelma, but yeah, so we basically did the entire thing completely from Danny's music library, which is vast, so that was Fashion Victim, which had no help from anybody besides what we came up with on our own. When I say we, I mean Danny would pitch tons of things, and we play a lot of them, and we kind of like, usually it was myself and my editor would kind of like decide that we all agreed that something was right. So
Definitely, I got shot down a lot of times, but there was
yeah, it was good stuff. But talk about Mean Girls. I mean Heather's, Danny, and I'll talk about Mean Girls.
Well, yeah, I mean Heather's. We scrupulously did not want to have pop songs in the movie. We didn't want it to be like a needle drop soundtrack kind of movie, and we couldn't afford it. But Que Sera is very funny. It's just like a friend of mine who's also a screenwriter, Larry Kierzewski, wrote Ed Wood and Dolomite and O.J. Simpson TV show. But he had the version of Que Sera at the end, which is kind of a bluesy version, and he played that music. You should end Heather's with that, and which I thought was kind of weird. But we put it up against the end of the movie, and it felt kind of groovy. And then Michael Lehman thought, well, we should have the full-on, more traditional version of the song because it really does work for kind of the establish innocence that we're going to put to shreds. But so kind of like that. And then we had Doris Day wouldn't let us use the original version because she read the script and thought it was satanic. But she didn't have the rights to the actual song, so we had somebody else sing it.
Nice. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah, my favorite story from Mean Girls is that we needed to do kind of a pre-record on one thing. We needed to have like a rock video that was something that used to exist back in the day, and it wasn't just on YouTube. But yeah, we had to have a rock video and a song that was kind of a new song, and we only had like $25,000 in the budget for it, which was not a lot of money to pay for a song. And so my music supervisor, which was Amanda Demi, she basically like sent me a CD with like 30 songs by kind of like unsigned artists that basically nobody liked. And the reason we needed to do it is we needed to actually shoot some stuff on film connected with the video and stuff. And I went through and listened to them. It was just all this terrible stuff. I heard this one song and I said, this song is amazing. Like, this song's like totally got the right energy. It's kind of like looks like something somebody would be doing like a strip tease or like a pole dance to. And it just was a great song. And I said, I want this one. He said, oh yeah, sure. We got the whole thing. We got 3 usages in the video for 25,000. And it was Kaylee's Milkshake, which then said off of this, suddenly Kaylee said, hey, we just got a deal to be in this Paramount movie. Then she got signed.
Really?
And it became a massive hit, and we felt like, oh, this is good. It was like you were able to it was very obvious that this one had the talent, the other ones didn't. And generally when you're in the editing room, and we knew we wanted lots of needle drops and lots of songs because I knew this was something that was going to drive a lot of these montage sequences and things. But what we did was you would usually like put in the song that you wanted, like it's just a song you knew. And I don't listen to as much music with my brother, but I do listen to a lot. And so yeah, you put in your favorite songs, and then usually you're just told, okay, that's great, but there's no way we can afford that song you want, so let's find something else. And some of the creative ways around it is like, for instance, at the Dancing with Myself, so I think we got the Donnas to do that at the end over the closing credits. So you get somebody else to do it as a new band that's a cool band to kind of like do a cover. That's one way around it. Other ways is you just have, okay, clearly this is the style that I want. Then you can have people come up with ideas of like, here's a song that's actually affordable that you can then use and be able to have in the movie. And we did an interesting thing too with the song that's used over the closing prom. It's actually a song that's used earlier in the movie when they're at the party at Katie's house. But then we took that same song and we got permission from the artist to do this. We slowed the song down. We slowed it down to like half the speed and pitch shifted everything so it matched the same pitch, and then used that as the kind of like this slow dance prom song at the end, which ended up working well.
But I will say the Mean Girls prom played much better with Coldplay's Warning Sign, which was in the original cut. But
oh yeah, but that was not
not a Coldplay fan, but Coldplay's Warning Sign is at a prom in Mean Girls was amazing.
I know. I still miss. Like I remember I had Eminem's "Without Me" over the scene inside the party, and it was very hard to give that up, And but we ended up getting a good track for that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for answering, and thank you for doing this. It's so cool.
Awesome.
We have Noah and then Audrey.
Noah,
are you there?
is he ready to show his face and unmute himself?
Well, let's jump to Audrey for now. It's Audrey and then Amanda, unless Noah comes back.
Noah's like waving. I can see him, but we can't hear him.
I need to, hold on. Maybe
Noah, if you select a different speaker
Noah.
that happened earlier.
Wait, no.
It looks like he's unmuted, but his audio is.
Yeah, no, you need to
He's
click
talking.
unmute at the
The poor
lower
guy's
button.
talking, man. Help him out.
Hey, bud, so if you click the arrow next to the mute button and switch the speakers, it should work for you.
Oh my God.
I think you have to allow him.
I'm reading clips. He's saying Heather's is so much better than Mean Girls.
Sorry, Noah, I'm not hearing you. But could we do the written submission of a question and just answer the question for him?
Yeah. Noah, go ahead and type your question.
Okay. In the meantime, let's go to who's the next person on the list.
Hello, thank you for taking all this time to talk with us.
Easy peasy. It's
We got
pleasure.
free time.
We're not doing much else.
True. So my question goes back to pretty much pre-production. I was wondering, so say you have a feature script, you've shot some pre-visual material, you've got like a basic budget lined up. What would be the next step y'all would take to go get funding or submit to studios? Sort of what would be the next path to getting your film actually made?
It's a big question. The thing is, when you say you just take me back again, you're saying that you've already have a script that you like, and you said you've created some visual materials to back it up. It's a big question of like, what's the next step? There is no obvious answer to it. The thing I always say, and this is more true back in the day than it is now, but if you have a script that actors want to read and actors like, that's going to make other people like it too. And when I made my first movie, I didn't have big actors in it, but I did have like Parker Posey and Jean-Pierre Bujold, Freddie Prinze Jr. read the script and say they wanted to do the movie. And so suddenly, like, their agencies, where we reached out to them, their agencies were like, hey, this is an actual movie. We're going to pay attention to this, and we're going to like start to kind of bring you more actors for other parts. And then we were able to then you're actually able to go to financing entities and say, here, look, we have this we have these people attached to this script that you probably wouldn't have read if we sent it to you just by itself, but now we actually have these attachments to it of people that are interested in doing it, who are kind of giving it in a weird way their blessing by saying they're interested. And now we're gonna suddenly it's read by financing entities with a different mindset. I mean, that's on a very low budget level. I had a friend who made a movie, a friend of both Rob and I, who made a movie, had Brad Pitt attached. And then Brad Pitt dropped out. And the studio said, we're still making the movie. You just need to bring us Russell Crowe or Leo DiCaprio. Then we'll do it, And so on every level, having that big actor makes a huge difference, or having any actors interested, it makes a big difference.
Yeah,
but I would say
I hate when they say that, though. It's just like, well, yeah, if I had Russell Crowe or Leonard DiCaprio, I wouldn't need to talk to you.
Yeah, but you don't need Leo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe is the point I'm making. Like having like actors that people know, like it's like you get Dermot Mulroney to say he likes your script. People are like, oh wait, like
strangely not Dylan McDermott. It's crazy.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna go there. But anyway, but the thing is, there's certainly some projects that you don't need any kind of actor to make the movie, and in those cases, I say just make the movie. Like, don't try like if it's something where you can make it and you don't need like to have any name actors in the movie, and you can make it with just really good local actors that you find from the local theater scene. Like, go make it yourself, make it for no money. And you make it a situation where you make it and then people say, okay, great, we're going to make it again now, and we're going to give you a lot of money. but seeing the low budget version makes people interested.
But yeah, unfortunately, studios aren't looking forward to like, oh, there's a movie in pre-production with effects. Like they want you to do all the work yourself when it comes to the studios. Like,
yeah, but I mean, the thing is, yeah, it's one of these classic Kafkaesque twists of the business where you say like, like, you can't get an agent until you made a movie, but how do you make a movie until you get an agent? It's like there is no kind of apprenticeship system that used to exist. You basically are kind of like always, you have to kind of think like a producer, even if you're just a writer director. You have to be somebody who's always trying to figure out, how do I get this thing set up? How do I get this thing going somehow? And it is oftentimes like, a very long and difficult process to do it, but I do feel like having a piece of material that people like kind of like feeds into it. And I'm not saying the script that I wrote based on the House Yes is particularly great, but it was good in the sense that like, this top casting director, Mary Renew, read it and said, oh, I want to do this movie. I want to work on this with you. Producers were saying, I'm willing to work on this for free for a year to help you get this set up because I believe it. I think it's really good. And then actors were interested too. So suddenly, that having any kind of material that seems interesting, that will attract its own energy around it. And then eventually that might find its way to somebody who has some money and give it to you.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
You bet.
So would you recommend focusing on shorts that I can produce and fund myself and trying to push them through the festival circuit and meet people through that?
I would say, like, yes, short films are great, and like, but at the same time, as like, I would say that also that and Rob and I can both attest to this because we went to the American Film Institute, and it was a very, very competitive program where there were 24 directors in our class, but only 8 of them were asked back to make a second year thesis film. And it was really brutal. And like, I'll name drop one of our buddies, who also, like Rob and I, was not asked back to make a thesis film, was Darren Aronofsky, who's kind of a fancy pants director, and also Doug Ellen, who created Entourage, not asked back, like, and so, like, there's really only one director from that group, who was asked back, who ended up having a good career. Everybody else is not even in the business anymore. So it's, but there's a long-winded way of saying that one of the great things for us is that we didn't have to make a thesis film. Like, we didn't make a short film. Like, instead we were forced to write. Then, because they said, if you want to get your master's degree, you can stay for a second year, but you're going to have to write an original screenplay. So I wrote 2. I wrote like one original screenplay, which kind of like, the head of the program, Stuart Kornfeld, really liked, and then I wrote another one which actually got me an agent. And so and so the fact that I was kind of forced to say I'm not going to be able to have the luxury of going into production and make a movie, you actually forced myself to create some new material. That was a great thing. And so I would say that yes, you want to be able to make a short film to show off that you have some cinematic chops, but it's more important to work on creating that material that people are going to want. And it may be finding a writing partner, like I said, finding a piece of a book that nobody cares about and nobody else wants the rights to besides you. And when I got the rights to this play, nobody had reached out to this playwright ever about this play. So I said, like, look, I'll give you $2,000, which actually was my brother's money. He lent it to me. At the time. I was like, give me this $2,000 and you'll give me the rights to this for a year. And if it ever gets made,
I still can't find my producing credit on the poster. It's weird. I guess I gotta make a poster.
Got special thanks, but no. Then you're basically saying, okay, yeah. And I made the deal. I said, I'm not even telling you how much money you're going to get paid. I'll just say whatever 5% of the budget is, the eventual budget, you'll get paid that. And she agreed to it, and we met for the first time at Sundance, and we did a panel together, and she's like, yes, I have to thank Mark for the new addition on my garage, because the money came through. So there's many ways, if you are not a pure writer, to create material, but you do have to think in a producerial manner of like, you're going to create this material one way or another, and then you own that material. And when you own that material, that and having a short film where you've shown that you actually know what to do with a camera and know how to, like, tell a story, those things in conjunction are going to make people look at you as a legitimate filmmaker.
I'll add, it's good to make one short film, but if you find yourself making a 3rd short film, you've done something wrong.
That's absolutely right. People get stuck in the mode of like, they're just shorts directors, and it's like you want to move beyond that. Do it enough so you get good at it. If you make a short film and you feel like, I didn't nail that, I can do better, keep doing it till you feel like you have a really nice piece of work that you can show people, but don't become a short film director.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we have 2 final questions. We have Noah's, and his mic may work now, and then we have.
I'll believe Noah when I see it or hear it.
No, he's still muted.
Oh, okay. Well, his question, he typed it out, is, can you talk about your general screenwriting process? How much planning do you like to do? How many drafts do you like to do? How much time do you spend on jokes, etc.? Sorry about the sound issues.
I'm going to address the sound issues first. I'm kidding. Well, you should only listen to me. My quarantine habits are second to none. I've been writing on a great schedule, and it's been great. But normally, like I said before, I'll do anything to put off the process of writing, which is not a complete insult to myself. Like, I hate movies about writers where they're like, what should I write about? Blank page, fade in colon. Oh God, what am I going to write? And then all of a sudden, crack of thunder happens, and they're like, woo, and they get it all comes out. Like that's never happened. It doesn't work that way. Like to me, you sneak up on it. You get the idea. Then you start expanding the idea in your mind. Like, oh, wouldn't it be great if they did this? Wouldn't it be great if they did? Make sure you know your damn ending. You get the ending, and then people go, oh, how did you write such great lines for Heathers? Because I didn't sit at a typewriter and let them flow through me. Like I would think of a line here, a line there, and then I write them down, write everything down, even if you think it's not going to be important. And then eventually you start to get, I'm a big believer in the index cards where you put the scene, this scene, this scene, and then you put the index cards in order. Like, great, this would be a great scene, this would be a great scene, this would be a great scene. Then you start to put them in order. I'm a big believer. Again, anything to put off the writing. And then when it finally comes and you come up with more scraps of paper, more like, oh, this would be a great line. Oh, this would be a great character thing. I'm going to give her a monocle. This is genius. Finally, when you sit down to actually do the fucking writing, you are just got like all these little scraps. Like you're not alone. You're like, this scene, this index card, look what I got written on the back of this index card. I got all this good shit. Like suddenly like, oh baby, this is beautiful. Who said writing was hard? Forgetting about the 4 months it took you to start writing. But it's still like, sneak up on it, but write without writing is a big deal with me. And then when you start writing, believe me, the writing's going to be fabulous and fun.
I mean, one thing I'm going to key into Danny a little bit here too, that Danny is one of the few people who still carries like a tiny little notepad and a pen or pencil in his pocket at all times. And he's always like writing little things down. He hears something funny that he likes, he writes it down. And he also has a thing where like, you always wonder like, why couldn't I come up with that great zinger until I left the conversation where that I left with egg on my face because I didn't have a good comeback. Danny will actually like remember, oh, this would have been the perfect comeback, and he'll write it down,
Yeah.
And then later on he'll be like, he'll have this whole accumulation of like, this was what a witty person would have said then in life.
The term is wit on the staircase, like the staircase that you win. So I've had many great romantic conversations that didn't happen when I was actually with the girl. But then when I think of the perfect charming line 20 minutes later, like at least I get to put it in a movie.
Yes. And one thing I would suggest is that as far as just like the general process of writing, my favorite book is Stephen King's On Writing. And the first half is kind of autobiographical about him, but the second half is really about his process. And it's, one thing I love he says is like, make sure your desk is not facing a window. Your desk is facing a wall, and and he also has this thing of like Danny does, which is like, yeah, you do a lot of pre-work of like, yeah, I feel like this is how I've mapped out the thing. This is what I feel like how it's going to end. But then you get surprised. Like hopefully your characters do things that you wouldn't expect them to, And apparently, like the guy in Misery wasn't supposed to live at the end. But as he kept writing, he's just really resourceful. He's coming up with all these ways to fight back. And then pretty soon it was like, oh, I guess he's going to win at the end. He's going to live, And so there's like, be willing to be surprised by the process while also doing a lot of pre-production work. I would say at a big level, as far as filmmaking in general, as a director, that's one of the other big notes too, is that I'm a crazy prepared director, and Danny can attest to this, that like at the beginning of every week, I publish a shot list for everything we're shooting that week. And on the sides, the back of the sides, the last page of the sides is that shot list for what we're doing that day. And the crew loves it. They're like, oh my God, we just did A, B, and C. We just have to get D before lunch. But, but the whole purpose of it is not necessarily to follow the shot list. It's just to have done the work, to have thought about it. Because then oftentimes I get there, I'm like, yeah, well, I'm going to cut this and this, and I'm combining this and this, and I'm doing something completely different because I liked the way the light looked over here, and we're going to rework that. But at least you've thought about it enough that you're giving you the freedom to be creative on set. And but without the prep work, you're just kind of lost at sea.
That's great.
Cool. Now
I think we have a last question, which is Amanda. If anyone has something burning to talk to these guys about, spit it out. But Amanda is next. And by the way, Noah just wrote, "Thank you guys so much."
Awesome.
Yeah,
Amanda, are
right.
you there?
I'm
Yeah.
good till 6, by the way. So if you got, we have another 20-25 minutes if you guys like. So for me, Danny has to start drinking soon, so he will have to, maybe go earlier. But hey, Amanda.
Hi, I'm an actor in Atlanta, and as you may know, we are #1 in film production. So just wondering
Yes.
what the take, yeah, what your take is on our market. Do you feel like we are considered green? We fight that stereotype I see it more as an actor. We really have to fight against the LA and New York actors. Just kind of what your take on what you see from your perspective on our market.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Your market in the weird way gets kind of lumped in with like North Carolina and Louisiana. Like I know a lot of agents. I know it's weird. There's a lot of agents that literally represent people who will work in any of those 3 places. Or like, okay, we're shooting this in Louisiana. It's like, that's okay, I'll come. Like it's so it's more like a regional thing. But I think it's changing in the sense that Atlanta is so dominant. It's a different thing. I would say with actors, the great thing is that the proof is on the tape. Like I don't care where somebody comes from, and like I've cast people in shows where like, yeah, they like I see everybody who's represented by a major agency in New York and Los Angeles and don't like anybody. And I tell my casting director, like, invite self tapes from anywhere or like start reaching out to different markets. The person I cast as to play like the young Matthew McConaughey in Ghost of Girlfriend's Past was from Houston. And it was only because like I made a show in Houston and I reached out to my caster and said, is anybody in your market who you like, who's this age, have them go on tape for me. And so it's actually a great way to watch stuff sometimes because oftentimes you're charmed by people in a room when you're actually doing a live session and you think they're better than they are, but actually seeing the tape and being able to go, wow, this person's got it. And they didn't have to do anything to charm me in the room. It's all there. That's great. But I mean, I think it's less about I say you a bit less about the market being green and more about each specific actor. What's their background? Like, are they trained? Are they just kind of like, because LA is filled with terrible, untrained, really, really beautiful young actors. There's like just about a lot of gorgeous people out here who are just like, who come out and they don't know how to act to save their lives. And they end up working, and so it kind of like encourages them to not continue to get better because they booked a CW guest spot, and so they don't work harder. And so I much prefer to see somebody who's actually like done some work, paid some dues, did some theater, is like, has some sort of training behind them. And that's going to be usually more interesting to me than somebody who's just kind of like, a pretty face who already may have a longer resume of things they've booked because they're really good looking, but not necessarily have anything to offer beyond that.
Thank you.
I love Atlanta. It's a great place.
I do too.
I just feel like the casting sessions happen out here and we're out here. But if I am shooting, I did a summer camp movie that I directed in North Carolina, and all my cast of the young people were from North Carolina and South Carolina and the South, and I had a great experience casting that.
That's good to hear. We're growing, so don't give up on it.
I'm watching that mini series. Wayne Williams really didn't do them all. That's terrible. I don't want to think about that.
Thank you for doing this.
Awesome.
Andrew, are you unmuted? Can you ask your question?
Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing your insight. So my question was about
dark.
When you're going through the initial process of like deciding on the concept that you want to write and then writing the script, how do you balance telling the story that's interesting to you and that you think is like the story to be told with what you think will be received well to your audiences, considering often be like studios and other parties?
Well, Mark knows how I'm going to answer this question.
Yeah, that's a T-ball stand for Danny.
I don't think a fucking speck about what other people are going to think. Like, I've seen enough movies. I love movies. I love loving movies. Like to me, if I'm gonna like it, if I'm like, you can't even think about what other people are gonna think. You got to just make sure you're completely happy. Because I know when I go, like, here's like, I'm overflowing. Okay, like I hate people. Like I have so many friends who, when they go see a movie, they'll rip it apart afterwards and be very critical. And then they give you your script to read, and like, well, this is a bigger piece of shit than anything you've ever criticized. Like, what the hell? I'm like, and then you try and say that in a mild way, and they go, well, it's what's selling right now. Like, fuck that. Like, to me, quote unquote, what's selling now is like looking at the light from a star that's really a planet that blew up 20,000 years ago. Like, by the time you figure out what's in and what's hot and what Hollywood Reporter says is a big genre right now, it's already dead. You got to think completely out of the box. You got to think about, and the thing is, you'll never be able to quite know what other people are going to think, but you know what you're going to think. You know what makes you happy. Think of all the movies that made you so happy. That's what you should be trying to be creating that, like getting back to that thing. Who cares if, like, do you want to make a hit? There's a bunch of hit movies I'm sure you've seen that were really popular that you don't like. Do you want to make that movie? No, you don't. You want to make a movie that you love. Like, at least you got to get one person to like it, even if that first person's you. I'll tell you, if you like it, if you know it's good, I guarantee you're gonna get a 2 and a 3 and a 4 person. Like,
And that's about it.
Yeah, but you may get up to 10, but
just taking off of what he's saying, the fact is that, like, by making the movie that you love and you want to see, that's secretly what we all want to read. When we read a screenplay, I want to feel when I say I want to hear that distinctive voice, that's what I want to see. I don't want to see somebody who's kind of like, it's so, everyone's very, very savvy here. If you're in a contrived way trying to write something quote unquote commercial, it comes across. If you're trying to write something that you think is fucking cool, that comes across, and that is fucking cool. And when people will be excited when they read it, going like, I read things sometimes where I'm like, wow, this is so not for me, but this writer's got this great point of view, and I'll send it to somebody else. I'll say, hey, this is not for me, but this is something you might be into, and I'll happily pass it on. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the passion and enthusiasm. You don't have a lot of passion and enthusiasm for trying to be a soothsayer about what the marketplace is. I would say the one thing that's maybe an interesting thing to that is that Danny put this right. It's like working in genre is actually a great way to break into the business in some ways. So like saying, like, if you love horror movies or you love thrillers and you have an idea for a thriller you always want to do, write it, because guess what? Like, you can take that to lots of people and they'll be like, yeah, we can make this for under 5 million and actually like and make this movie. It's much harder to say, I want to do a coming of age relationship drama between two 70-year-olds. That's my passion, man. I got to write that. But if it is, great. But at the same time, that's a little bit going to be a harder sell. So if there's a little bit of consciousness of like, yeah, like working in something that is a recognizable genre is not necessarily a bad thing, but don't do it because you're just trying to sell it. Do it because you love it.
yeah, you love the genre. And I find, like, when you watch a genre movie, there always comes that point, and you learn a lot by watching other movies where you're like, if you take the fork, you can take the fork in the road of the way every other movie's done it, and then wait a second, what if we did this instead of the usual thing that they do in the horror movie? And when you go down that road, you get a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you guys. That was really helpful.
You guys, can everyone? I think we're wrapped. I think we've answered every question. And you guys, Mark and Danny, you've been very, very generous with your time and your thoughts. Can everyone unmute themselves and give these guys a hand?
Cheerio. Bravo.
All right.
Well, it's great seeing you guys. Keep safe, stay sane, and enjoy the rest of your class with Rob. He's a righteous dude.
All right.
you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Guys, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, thank you for setting it all up.
Love that you slicked the hair back, Rob.
Teaching mode, so I need to.
Look the part. Yeah.
Huh. Okay, well, really nice to see y'all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you too. Have a good night.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bye,
See ya.
Melissa. Bye, Rhett. Bye, Sam.
Bye.